Lily had always known her place in the family. She was the quiet one, the responsible one, the daughter who never asked for much. While her older sister Isabella dazzled everyone with her beauty and confidence, Lily found comfort in her work as a nurse at County General Hospital. She didn't mind living in Isabella's shadow. In fact, she preferred it that way. Less attention meant less pressure, less expectation. Isabella was getting married in 3 months. Her fiancé, Dominic Harrington, came from one of the wealthiest families in the city. His family owned half the commercial buildings downtown, and the wedding was going to be the event of the year. Lily had helped Isabella pick out her dress, a stunning ivory gown that cost more than Lily made in 6 months. She'd smiled and told her sister how beautiful she looked, pushing down the tiny flutter of something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. The night of the accident, Lily was working the late shift. She remembered checking her phone during her break and seeing a missed call from Isabella. Her sister had left a voicemail, her voice tight with emotion. "Lily, I need to talk to you. It's about Dominic. I think I made a mistake." Before Lily could call back, the emergency room doors burst open. They brought Isabella in on a stretcher, unconscious and bleeding. A car accident on the highway. The rain had been coming down in sheets and her car had hydroplaned into a concrete barrier. Lily's hands shook as she watched the trauma team work on her sister, helpless despite all her medical training. She wasn't allowed in the room. Hospital policy. She could only watch through the glass, praying with every breath that Isabella would be okay. But Isabella didn't wake up. Days turned into weeks and she remained in a coma. The doctor said her brain had swelled from the impact. They'd done everything they could, but now it was a waiting game. She might wake up tomorrow or next month or never. The uncertainty was torture. Lily practically lived at the hospital those first few weeks. She'd finish her shift and then camp out in Isabella's room, holding her sister's cold hand and talking to her about everything and nothing. Their parents were devastated. Their father had to take leave from his job at the post office and their mother stopped eating properly. The medical bills started piling up almost immediately. Even with insurance, the costs were crushing. ICU care, specialists, round-the-clock monitoring. The numbers made Lily's head spin. Dominic visited every day at first. He'd sit by Isabella's bedside, his face a mask of grief. Lily watched him sometimes, wondering what Isabella had wanted to tell her that night. What mistake had she mentioned? But she never asked. It didn't seem right to question him while Isabella lay there, unable to speak for herself. 6 weeks after the accident, Dominic's mother came to see Lily. Catherine Harrington was a woman who commanded attention the moment she entered a room. She wore pearls and expensive perfume, and her heels clicked sharply against the hospital floor. She asked Lily to join her in the private consultation room down the hall. Lily's stomach nodded as she followed. She'd met Catherine a few times at engagement parties and family dinners, but the woman had barely acknowledged her existence. Now, Catherine was looking at her with an intensity that made Lily want to squirm. "I'll be direct," Catherine said, settling into a chair with practiced elegance. "My father-in-law is dying. He has weeks, perhaps days left. His final wish is to see Dominic married. It's important to him, and frankly, it's important to the family business. There are certain inheritance clauses that require Dominic to be married to access his full share of the company." Lily blinked, confused. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't understand what this has to do with me." Catherine's expression didn't change. "Isabella obviously cannot marry my son in her current condition. We need someone to stand in her place. Temporarily. Just until my father-in-law passes and the business matters are settled." The words didn't make sense at first. Lily actually laughed, thinking it must be some kind of sick joke. But Catherine wasn't smiling. "You want me to marry Dominic?" Lily's voice came out as a whisper. "Instead of Isabella? That's insane." "It's practical," Catherine corrected. "You're Isabella's sister. You look similar enough. It would be a marriage in name only, naturally. Purely a legal arrangement. Once the situation stabilizes, you can divorce quietly. No one needs to know the details." Lily stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "No, absolutely not. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Isabella is my sister. I could never. Your parents are drowning in debt." Catherine's words cut through the air like a knife. "Isabella's medical bills are approaching $500,000. Your father's insurance won't cover even a quarter of it. I've seen the collection notices." Lily felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She knew things were bad, but $500,000? Her parents would lose everything. Their house, their retirement savings, everything they'd worked for their entire lives. Catherine continued, her voice softer now. If you agree to this arrangement, the Harrington family will cover all of Isabella's medical expenses. All of them. For as long as necessary. We'll also settle your parents' debts. In exchange, you marry Dominic, help us satisfy my father-in-law's dying wish, and maintain this arrangement until it's no longer needed. Does Dominic know about this? Lily asked, her voice barely audible. He's agreed. Reluctantly, but he understands the necessity. Lily walked to the window, staring out at the parking lot below. Cars came and went. Normal people living normal lives. How had her life turned into something so bizarre? She thought about her parents. How tired her father looked, how her mother had aged 10 years and 6 weeks. She thought about Isabella, lying in that bed, kept alive by machines and hope. I need time to think, Lily finally said. You have 24 hours, Catherine replied. My father-in-law doesn't have longer than that. That night, Lily sat in Isabella's hospital room and cried. She held her sister's limp hand and tried to imagine what Isabella would want her to do. Would she be angry? Would she understand? The machines beeped steadily, marking time in a rhythm that had become sickeningly familiar. Lily thought about the voicemail. I think I made a mistake. Had Isabella been having doubts about Dominic? About the wedding? If she had, did that make this situation any less terrible? Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. The hospital called about another bill. I don't know what we're going to do, sweetheart. Lily looked at her sister's face, peaceful in sleep, and made a decision that would change everything. She picked up her phone and called Catherine Harrington. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady even as her heart shattered. But I want everything in writing. And Isabella's care is guaranteed for life no matter what happens. Of course, Catherine replied, satisfaction evident in her tone. I'll have the lawyers draw up the papers. We'll hold the ceremony this weekend. After hanging up, Lily stayed with Isabella until dawn broke through the window. She whispered apologies and promises, knowing her sister couldn't hear her. But maybe, somewhere in whatever darkness Isabella was trapped in, some part of her understood. Maybe she'd even forgive Lily for what she was about to do. Or maybe not. Lily honestly didn't know which possibility scared her more. The lawyers came with stacks of papers that Lily barely understood. Prenuptial agreements, confidentiality clauses, financial arrangements. She signed everything with numb fingers, watching her handwriting blur across page after page. Catherine sat across from her, perfectly composed, while Lily felt like she was signing away pieces of her soul. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday morning, not in a church or a fancy venue, but in the small chapel attached to County General Hospital. Catherine had insisted on it, claiming Dominic's grandfather was too ill to travel. But Lily suspected the real reason was simpler. The chapel was private, quiet, and far from prying eyes and gossip. Lily wore a simple cream dress she'd bought from a department store. Nothing fancy, nothing that felt like a real wedding. She couldn't bring herself to wear white. That felt like too much of a lie. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection, and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her parents didn't know the full truth. She'd told them that Dominic's family wanted to move forward with a small private ceremony to honor his grandfather's wishes, and that Isabella would want them to. Her mother had cried, conflicted between grief and gratitude that the Harringtons were being so generous with Isabella's medical care. Her father had looked at Lily with worried eyes as if he sensed something wasn't right, but was too afraid to ask. Dominic arrived at the chapel 10 minutes before the ceremony. Lily hadn't seen him in 2 weeks, not since Catherine had first approached her with the proposal. He looked terrible. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his expensive suit hung a bit loose on his frame, as if he'd lost weight. When his eyes met hers, she saw no warmth there, only resentment and grief. They didn't speak before the ceremony. What was there to say? They were two people forced into an impossible situation, and neither wanted to be there. The ceremony itself lasted less than 15 minutes. A hospital chaplain who asked no questions and seemed used to unusual circumstances. Catherine and one of Dominic's cousins served as witnesses. Lily's parents weren't there. She'd told them the ceremony was family only and they'd accepted it, too exhausted from weeks of hospital vigils to question much anymore. When the chaplain said, "You may kiss the bride," Dominic hesitated. Then he leaned in and pressed a cold, brief kiss to Lily's cheek, not her lips. Even in this farce, that felt like too much intimacy. Lily was grateful for it. Afterward, Catherine handed them both rings. Lily stared at the diamond on her finger, heavy and foreign. It had probably been meant for Isabella. The thought made her feel sick. "Dominic's grandfather passed this morning," Catherine announced quietly as they signed the marriage certificate. Peacefully in his sleep, Lily felt the air leave her lungs. He was already gone. They'd rushed through this ceremony for a man who had died hours before. She looked at Dominic and saw the same realization crossing his face, but there was no taking it back now. The papers were signed. They were legally married. The Harrington mansion sat on 5 acres outside the city. Lily had been there once before, for an engagement party that felt like it had happened in another lifetime. The place was enormous, with more rooms than she could count, and staff who moved silently through the halls like ghosts. Catherine showed Lily to her room on the 2nd floor. It was beautiful, decorated in soft blues and cream, with a bathroom bigger than Lily's entire apartment had been. "Dominic's quarters are in the east wing," Catherine said, her tone making it clear they would not be sharing space. "You'll have privacy. The staff has been instructed to maintain discretion." After Catherine left, Lily sat on the edge of the massive bed and finally let herself cry. She cried for Isabella, still trapped in that hospital bed. She cried for her parents, who thought their daughter was in some kind of practical arrangement to help the family. She cried for herself, trapped in a marriage to a man who looked at her like she was the enemy. The first weeks in the mansion were suffocating. Lily barely saw Dominic. He left for work before dawn and came home after she'd gone to bed. On the rare occasions they passed each other in the hallways, he'd nod curtly and keep walking. The staff prepared meals that Lily ate alone in the vast dining room, feeling ridiculous at a table meant for 12. She still visited Isabella every day. That was part of her agreement with Catherine. She could keep her job at the hospital and maintain her normal schedule as much as possible. Sitting beside Isabella's bed became her only moment of peace. She'd hold her sister's hand and talk about everything except the truth. She told Isabella about the weather, about cute things patients had said, about a new coffee shop that opened downtown. Normal, safe topics that didn't include the words, "I married your fiancé." But the guilt ate at her. Every single day it grew heavier. She'd catch herself looking at Isabella's face, searching for any sign of judgment or anger, even though she knew her sister couldn't hear her. "I'm so sorry," she'd whisper. "I didn't know what else to do." One night, about a month into the marriage, Lily woke up thirsty around 2 in the morning. She padded down to the kitchen in her pajamas, thinking the house was asleep. But when she pushed open the kitchen door, she found Dominic sitting at the island counter in the dark, a glass of whiskey in his hand. They both froze. Lily almost turned around and left, but something in his posture stopped her. He looked so tired, so defeated. "Sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know anyone was up. I just wanted some water." Dominic gestured vaguely toward the glasses. "Help yourself." Lily got her water and something made her stay. Maybe it was the darkness or the late hour, or the fact that they'd been living as strangers for weeks. She sat down at the other end of the counter, keeping distance between them. "I went to see her tonight," Dominic said suddenly. "Isabella. I go every night after work." Lily's chest tightened. "I didn't know that. I stay until they kick me out at midnight." He took a drink. "I sit there and I talk to her. Tell her about my day. Ask her opinion on business decisions, even though she can't answer. I keep thinking that maybe if I just talk enough, she'll wake up to tell me to shut up." Lily smiled sadly at that. It sounded exactly like something Isabella would do. "I found her phone," Dominic continued. "The police gave it back. It was damaged, but I got it working. She'd called you that night. Before the accident." "I know," Lily whispered. "She left me a voicemail." "Did you listen to it?" "Just the first part. She said she needed to talk about you. That she'd made a mistake." Lily paused. "I never got to call her back." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. "We'd been fighting. That night. She told me she didn't think we should get married. Said she felt trapped, like she was living a life someone else had written for her." The confession hung in the air between them. Lily didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to ask more, but part of her didn't want to know. It was easier to think of Isabella and Dominic as a perfect couple, easier to shoulder the guilt of what she'd done. I told her she was being dramatic, Dominic said, his voice rough. I told her wedding jitters were normal, and that she'd feel better in the morning. We argued and she left. And then... He didn't finish the sentence. It wasn't your fault, Lily said softly. Wasn't it? Dominic looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time since the wedding. I pushed her when I should have listened, and now she's in a coma, and I'm married to her sister, and this whole thing is so messed up I don't even know where to start. I know, Lily said. I feel like the worst person in the world every single day. You're not, Dominic said, surprising her. You did this for your family. I get that. I don't like it, but I get it. They sat in silence for a while, the darkness making it easier to be honest. My mother engineered this whole thing, Dominic finally said. The inheritance clause was real, but she exaggerated how urgent it was. She's always been more concerned with the business than with people. I should have fought harder against it. We both should have, Lily said. After that night, something shifted. Dominic started coming home for dinner occasionally. They'd eat together. Conversations stilted at first, but gradually becoming more natural. They talked about Isabella, about the hospital updates, about safe topics. They were like two prisoners sharing a cell, finding comfort in mutual understanding. Lily learned that Dominic loved old movies and hated modern art, that he'd wanted to be a teacher before family pressure pushed him into the business, that he visited his grandfather's grave every Sunday and still hadn't cried about his death. Dominic learned that Lily had given up her dream of medical school to help pay for Isabella's college, that she was terrified of heights but loved thunderstorms, that she'd never been in love because she'd always been too busy taking care of everyone else. They weren't friends exactly, but they weren't strangers anymore either. And somehow, that made everything more complicated. 3 months into the marriage, Lily caught a terrible flu. She tried to push through it, going to work despite the fever and body aches. But halfway through her shift, she nearly fainted while checking a patient's vitals. Her supervisor sent her home immediately. Lily drove back to the mansion in a fog, her head pounding and her skin burning. She made it to her room and collapsed onto the bed, too exhausted to even change out of her scrubs. The next thing she remembered was someone pressing a cool cloth to her forehead and coaxing her to drink water. It was Dominic. He sat on the edge of her bed, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, looking worried. Your supervisor called me when you didn't answer your phone, he explained. She said you were sick. I'm fine, Lily mumbled, though her chattering teeth said otherwise. You're clearly not fine. When's the last time you ate? Lily couldn't remember. Yesterday? The day before? Time felt blurry. Dominic disappeared and came back with soup that the cook had prepared. He helped her sit up and made sure she ate at least half the bowl. Over the next 2 days, he checked on her regularly, bringing medicine and water, making sure she had everything she needed. It was strange and awkward and oddly touching. You don't have to do this, Lily told him on the second day when her fever had finally broken. I know this isn't a real marriage. Dominic paused in the doorway. Maybe not, but you're still a person living in this house, and you've been taking care of everyone else. Someone should take care of you. After that, the walls between them started crumbling faster. Dominic came home for dinner most nights now. They'd sit in the smaller dining room instead of the formal one, talking about their days. Lily found herself laughing at his dry humor, and he seemed to relax around her in ways he didn't with anyone else. One Saturday, Dominic found Lily in the library, surrounded by medical textbooks. She'd been studying for an exam that would let her advance her nursing certification. You're still working toward medical school? He asked, surprised. Maybe someday, Lily said with a small shrug. Probably not. But I like learning. Keeps me sharp. You should do it, Dominic said, settling into the chair across from her. Apply to medical school, I mean. You'd be a great doctor. It's expensive and time-consuming. I can't just... We have money, Dominic interrupted. More than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. If you want to go to medical school, go. Consider it part of our arrangement. Lily looked at him, trying to read his expression. Why would you do that? Because you gave up your dreams once already for your family. You shouldn't have to do it twice. The offer sat between them, heavy with unspoken implications. If Lily accepted, it would mean planning for a future that included this strange arrangement. It would mean settling into this life instead of waiting for it to end. She told him she'd think about it, but the conversation stayed with her for days. They started spending more time together. Movie nights in the home theater, where Dominic introduced her to classic films she'd never seen. Walks through the mansion gardens on Sunday mornings. He taught her to play chess, and she taught him to cook simple meals when the staff had their days off. They burned spaghetti and laughed about it like normal people, like friends. Lily still visited Isabella every day, but now Dominic sometimes came with her. They'd sit on either side of Isabella's bed, talking to her together, sharing stories. It felt both right and horribly wrong. Lily would watch Dominic hold Isabella's hand and feel her chest tighten with complicated emotions she didn't want to name. One evening, about 5 months into the marriage, Lily was reading in the living room when Dominic came home from work looking frustrated. A business deal had fallen through, something about a property development that his board had voted against. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair, venting about short-sighted investors and corporate politics. "Why do you do it?" Lily asked. "The business, I mean. You said you wanted to be a teacher." Dominic stopped pacing. "Family obligation, the Harrington legacy, all the usual reasons." "Those aren't your reasons, though." He looked at her for a long moment. "No, they're not. I do it because it's what's expected, what I've always done. I wouldn't even know how to walk away at this point." "You could figure it out," Lily said softly. "People change careers all the time," says the woman who won't apply to medical school. "Touché." They smiled at each other, and something passed between them. An understanding. A recognition of kindred spirits, both trapped by obligations they'd chosen and resented in equal measure. The dangerous moments started small. Dominic's hand brushing hers when they both reached for the salt at dinner. The way her heart jumped when she heard his car in the driveway. How he'd started smiling more, and how she'd noticed she was the cause of it. The time she fell asleep during a movie and woke up with his jacket draped over her like a blanket. Lily tried to ignore it. She reminded herself constantly who she was and why she was here. She'd married her Comatose sister's fiancé for money. She was living in Isabella's house with Isabella's man, in Isabella's life. Any feelings beyond practical friendship were a betrayal so massive she couldn't even process it. But feelings don't listen to logic. They grow in the spaces between words, in shared silences, in the comfort of someone who understands your guilt because they carry the same weight. One night, Lily came home late from the hospital. Isabella had had a small seizure, nothing serious but scary nonetheless. Lily was shaky and upset, and without thinking, she went to find Dominic instead of going to her room. He was in his study reviewing contracts, but he took one look at her face and immediately pulled her into a hug. She cried against his shoulder, and he held her, his hand gentle on her back. "She's okay," Lily said into his shirt. "The doctor said she's okay, but I was so scared." "I know," Dominic murmured. "I know." They stood like that for several minutes. When Lily finally pulled back, she became acutely aware of how close they were standing. Of his hands still on her arms. Of the way he was looking at her, his eyes dark and conflicted. "Lily," he said, his voice rough. She stepped back quickly. "I should go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize." He ran a hand over his face. "This is getting complicated. I know." Neither of them said what they meant. That somewhere between the forced marriage and the shared grief and the late-night conversations, something had shifted. That they'd stopped being strangers and started being something else. Something that had no name and no right to exist. Lily went to her room and didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling and tried to hate herself for the warmth that had spread through her chest when Dominic held her. She tried to feel disgusted by the fact that she'd wanted to stay in his arms, but all she felt was confused and guilty and terrified. The next day they were extra polite with each other. Careful, like two people walking around broken glass trying not to cut themselves. They didn't have dinner together. Lily claimed she wasn't hungry, and Dominic said he had work to catch up on. Both lies. This couldn't continue. Lily knew it. Whatever was growing between them needed to be stopped before it became something that couldn't be taken back. Isabella was her sister. Her sister. The woman lying in a hospital bed, helpless and unaware that her life was being stolen piece by piece. Lily decided she needed to create distance. She started taking extra shifts at the hospital. She came home exhausted and went straight to her room. When Dominic tried to talk to her, she kept her answers short and polite. She watched him notice the change, saw the hurt and confusion in his eyes, and hated herself for causing it. But it was necessary. It was the right thing to do. Except one Saturday morning, Lily found Dominic in the garden sitting on a bench with his head in his hands. She should have walked away. She should have gone back inside and maintained the distance she'd been building, but she couldn't leave him there looking so lost. "Are you okay?" she asked, sitting down beside him but not too close. "My mother wants to know when we're going to give her grandchildren," Dominic said bitterly. Apparently 5 months is long enough for a real marriage to produce results. Lily felt her face heat. "What did you tell her?" "That it's none of her business." But she's relentless. She keeps pushing, making comments. Yesterday she asked if we'd considered fertility treatments. "That's horrible. That's Catherine Harrington." He looked at Lily. "I'm sorry you're stuck in this, in all of it. You should be living your own life, dating people your own age, figuring out who you are. Instead, you're trapped in this mansion with me." "I chose this," Lily reminded him. "Doesn't make it fair." They sat in silence, watching butterflies drift between the flowers. The morning sun was warm, and somewhere nearby a bird sang. It was peaceful and painful all at once. "I've been avoiding you," Lily said finally. "I noticed. It's because—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "I know," Dominic said quietly. "I feel it too. And it scares me." There it was, the truth between them spoken aloud. They both felt it. This thing that shouldn't exist. This connection that had formed against all logic and sense. "We can't," Lily whispered. "Isabella, I know. It would be unforgivable. I know." But even as they said it, they weren't moving apart. They were sitting close enough that Lily could feel the warmth of him, could smell his cologne, could see the exact moment he stopped fighting and leaned in. Their foreheads touched. Not a kiss, not yet, but close enough to be dangerous. Close enough to be a betrayal. They pulled apart before their lips could meet, both breathing hard, both horrified by how close they'd come. Lily stood up quickly, her legs shaky. "I can't do this. I can't be near you. Lily, wait. No." She was already walking away, practically running back to the house. She went straight to her room and locked the door, leaning against it like she was keeping out a monster. But the monster wasn't Dominic. It was her own heart betraying her in the worst possible way. She loved him. Somewhere between the awkward dinners and the late-night conversations and the chess games, she'd fallen in love with her sister's fiancé. The realization made her sick. She spent the rest of the day in her room crying until she had no tears left. That evening, Lily's phone rang. It was her mother. "Honey, the doctors want to meet with us tomorrow." "About Isabella." "They said it's important." Lily's blood ran cold. "Did they say what it's about?" "No, but they sounded serious."
"Can you come?"
"Of course. I'll be there." The meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Lily barely slept that night, imagining every possible scenario. When she went downstairs the next morning, Dominic was waiting in the kitchen. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Your mother called me too," he said. "About the meeting." "I'll drive you." "That's not necessary." "Lily, please. Whatever is happening with us, Isabella is still important to both of us. Let me be there." She was too tired to argue. The doctor's office was small and depressing, with generic artwork on the walls and uncomfortable chairs. Lily's parents were already there, holding hands, looking aged and worn. Dr. Martinez, Isabella's neurologist, sat behind his desk with a folder of charts. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I wanted to discuss Isabella's long-term prognosis. She's been in a coma for nearly 8 months now. We've seen no significant improvement in her brain activity, no response to stimuli, no signs of consciousness." Lily's mother started crying quietly. Her father squeezed her hand tighter. "What are you saying?" Lily asked, though she already knew. "I'm saying it's time to consider the possibility that Isabella may not wake up. And if that's the case, you need to think about her quality of life, her wishes." "You want us to take her off life support," Lily's father said, his voice cracking. "I want you to consider all options. Isabella is stable, but she's not improving. She could remain in this state indefinitely, or her condition could decline. These are difficult decisions and there's no rush, but you should start thinking about what Isabella would want." The room felt airless. Lily couldn't breathe. Beside her, Dominic had gone pale. She's only 26, Lily's mother sobbed. She has her whole life ahead of her. I understand this is incredibly painful, Dr. Martinez said gently. Take time to discuss it as a family. But I recommend you start considering your options. After the meeting, they stood in the hospital parking lot, no one knowing what to say. Lily's parents looked destroyed. Her father kept wiping his eyes, trying not to break down completely. We can't give up on her, Dominic said suddenly. There are other specialists, other treatments. I'll pay for anything. Everything. Dominic, Lily's father said tiredly. You've already done so much. But maybe the doctor is right. Maybe we're just prolonging her suffering. She's not suffering, Dominic insisted. She's stable. She could wake up tomorrow. Or never, Lily's mother said softly. And we can't keep her trapped like this forever just because we can't let go. The argument continued, everyone too raw and emotional to think clearly. Finally, they agreed to take 2 weeks to think about it before making any decisions. Lily's parents left, and she and Dominic sat in his car in silence. I can't do this, Dominic said, his hands gripping the steering wheel. I can't decide whether she lives or dies. How do people make choices like this? I don't know, Lily whispered. They drove back to the mansion in heavy silence. That evening, neither of them could eat. They sat in the living room, the TV on, but neither watching it. The weight of the decision ahead of them was crushing. I think about what she'd want, Dominic said into the quiet. Isabella was always so full of life, so vibrant. She'd hate being trapped in that bed, dependent on machines. But we don't know for sure she won't wake up. We don't know for sure she will either. Lily started crying again. She was so tired of crying, but the tears kept coming. Dominic moved to sit beside her, pulling her into his arms. This time she didn't pull away. She let him hold her while she fell apart. I'm so tired, she sobbed. I'm tired of feeling guilty. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of being strong. I know, he murmured against her hair. Me too. They held each other like drowning people clinging to wreckage. And then, because they were both broken and exhausted and terrified, because they'd been fighting their feelings for months, because they needed something good in all this darkness, they kissed. It was desperate and sad and completely wrong. Lily knew it even as it was happening. But for just a moment, she let herself feel something other than guilt and grief. She let herself pretend this was real, that they were just two people who'd found each other in the normal way. When they pulled apart, reality crashed back in. Lily saw the horror in Dominic's eyes that probably matched her own. Oh God, she whispered. What did we do? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Lily stood up, backing away from him. Isabella is lying in a hospital bed and I can't do this. Lily, I'm leaving. I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow. We're getting divorced. This was a mistake, all of it. Where will you go? I don't know. Anywhere but here. She ran to her room and started throwing clothes into a suitcase. She had to leave before she did something else unforgivable, before she let herself fall even deeper into this nightmare. She heard Dominic knock on her door, heard him calling her name, but she didn't answer. By midnight, her bag was packed. She'd leave in the morning, go stay with a friend from the hospital, figure out her life from there. The marriage would end. She'd find a way to help her parents with Isabella's bills. She'd fix this mess she'd created. But at 3 a.m, her phone rang. The hospital. Lily's hands shook as she answered. Miss Chen, this is Dr. Martinez. You need to come to the hospital right away. It's about your sister. What happened? Is she okay? Her condition has changed. She's showing signs of consciousness. She moved her hand in response to stimuli. Her eyes are fluttering. We think she might be waking up. Lily dropped the phone. She ran down the hallway to Dominic's room and pounded on the door. When he opened it, she could barely get the words out. Isabella. The hospital called. She's waking up. The drive to the hospital was a blur. They didn't speak, but Lily could feel the panic radiating off both of them. Isabella was waking up. She'd open her eyes and want to know where she was, what happened, why so much time had passed, and they'd have to tell her. About the marriage. About everything. By the time they got to the ICU, Isabella's parents were already there. Through the window, Lily could see her sister's hand moving slightly. Her eyelids were twitching. The machines showed increased brain activity. It's really happening, her mother said, crying. She's coming back to us. Lily watched her sister and felt joy and terror in equal measure. She wanted Isabella to wake up more than anything. But she was also terrified of the moment when Isabella would look at her and know what she'd done. Dominic stood beside her, his face pale. "What do we tell her?" "The truth," Lily said, though her voice shook. "We tell her the truth." Over the next few hours, Isabella's movements became more pronounced. Her eyes opened briefly, unfocused and confused. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. It would take time, maybe days or weeks, but Isabella was coming back. Lily sat in the waiting room, her packed suitcase still in Dominic's car. She'd been ready to leave, to run away from everything. But now Isabella was waking up and running wasn't an option anymore. She'd married her sister's fiancé. She'd fallen in love with him. She'd kissed him while Isabella lay helpless just floors below. And now Isabella would wake up to find her entire life had been turned upside down. There was no way this ended well. No version of the truth that didn't destroy everything, but it was too late to take any of it back. Dominic sat down beside her, careful not to touch her. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we face it together. We owe her that much." Lily nodded, unable to speak. Through the waiting room window, she could see the sun starting to rise. A new day. The day everything would change again. She just hoped they'd all survive it. Isabella opened her eyes fully 3 days later. Lily was there when it happened, sitting beside the bed during her lunch break. One moment Isabella's eyes were closed and the next they were open, blinking slowly against the fluorescent lights. "Isabella?" Lily's voice came out as a whisper. Her sister's eyes moved toward the sound, struggling to focus. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her throat was raw from months of intubation. Lily pressed the call button, and within seconds the room was full of doctors and nurses, checking vitals, asking questions, running tests. Isabella was confused and disoriented. She didn't know where she was or why. The doctors explained she'd been in an accident, that she'd been unconscious for 8 months. Lily watched her sister's face cycle through shock, disbelief, and fear. 8 months? Isabella finally managed to croak out. How is that possible? Over the next few days, Isabella's condition improved rapidly. Her memory was intact, though the last thing she clearly remembered was getting into her car that rainy night. The accident itself was gone, wiped clean from her mind. The doctor said it was common with head trauma. Lily visited every day, but she kept the conversation surface level. She talked about what Isabella had missed, new TV shows, celebrity gossip, changes at the hospital. She avoided anything real, avoided the truth that hung over them like a storm cloud. Isabella seemed different somehow. Quieter, more thoughtful. She'd stare out the window for long periods, and Lily would wonder what she was thinking. Was she trying to remember? Did some part of her sense that everything had changed? Dominic came to visit too, but never at the same time as Lily. They'd coordinated their schedules to avoid being there together, both of them cowards putting off the inevitable. When Lily asked the nurses how Isabella reacted to Dominic's visits, they said she seemed glad to see him but distant, like she wasn't quite sure how to act around him. 2 weeks after waking up, Isabella was moved out of the ICU to a regular room. She could walk with assistance now, though she tired easily. Her speech was clearer. The doctors said she'd need months of physical therapy, but the prognosis was good. She'd recover. That's when Lily knew they couldn't wait any longer. They had to tell her. She met with Dominic and her parents in the hospital cafeteria. "We need to tell Isabella the truth. About everything," her father nodded slowly. "She's been asking questions. Why there are legal documents with your name on them? Lily, why Dominic seems so uncomfortable around her?" "She deserves to know," her mother agreed, though her voice shook. They decided to tell her together that afternoon. Lily felt like she was walking to her own execution as they made their way to Isabella's room. Dominic walked beside her, his face pale but determined. Isabella was sitting up in bed looking stronger than she had in days. She smiled when they all walked in, but the smile faded when she saw their expressions. "This looks serious," she said. "Someone want to tell me what's going on?" Lily's father cleared his throat. "Sweetheart, some things happened while you were in the coma. Things you need to know about. They're going to be hard to hear." Isabella's eyes moved from face to face, landing on Lily. "What things?" Lily forced herself to speak. "After your accident, the medical bills started piling up. Mom and Dad couldn't afford them. We were going to lose everything." She paused, her throat tight. Dominic's family offered to pay for all of it. Your care, the bills, everything. But there was a condition. What condition? Dominic stepped forward. My grandfather was dying. He wanted to see me married before he passed. There were business reasons too, inheritance issues. My mother suggested that someone stand in for you at the wedding. Just temporarily to satisfy the legal requirements. Isabella's eyes widened. Stand in for me? Who? She looked at Lily and understanding dawned on her face. No, please tell me you didn't. I'm so sorry, Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know what else to do. They were going to take the house. Mom and Dad would have lost everything. I thought it was just paperwork, just a formality. I never meant for it to go this far. You married Dominic? Isabella's voice was barely audible. My fiancé? Legally, yes. But it wasn't real. We've been living in separate parts of the house. It was just supposed to be temporary, just until what? Until I conveniently died? Isabella's voice rose, anger cutting through the confusion. How could you do this? You're my sister. I know, and I'm so sorry. Isabella turned to Dominic. And you? You went along with this? I didn't have much choice, Dominic said quietly. My family pressured me, said it was the only way. I resented it every day, did you? Isabella's eyes were sharp now, focused. Because from what the nurses tell me, you two seem pretty comfortable together. Coordinating your visits so you don't have to face me at the same time. That doesn't sound like resentment to me. Lily felt her face burn. Isabella, just tell me the truth. All of it. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Dominic spoke. Things got complicated. We started as strangers. We stayed that way for months. But then we started talking, becoming friends, and somewhere along the way, he stopped, unable to finish. You fell in love with my sister while I was in a coma. It wasn't a question. I'm so sorry, Dominic said. I never meant for it to happen. Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is unbelievable. This is like something out of a terrible movie. She looked at Lily. Did you sleep with him? No, God, no. We kissed once and it was a mistake. We both knew it was wrong. Once. Isabella shook her head. Once is all it takes, isn't it? To cross the line you can't come back from. Lily's mother was crying quietly. Her father looked like he'd aged another 10 years. No one knew what to say. What could they say? There were no words that would make this better. Finally, Isabella spoke again, her voice calmer now. Tired. I need you all to leave. I need time to process this. Isabella, please, Lily started. Leave. Now. They filed out of the room like mourners leaving a funeral. In the hallway, Lily's mother pulled her into a hug and Lily broke down completely. She'd known this would be bad, but the reality was so much worse. The look on Isabella's face, the betrayal in her eyes. Lily would never forget it. Over the next week, Isabella refused to see any of them except their parents. Lily tried to visit multiple times, but Isabella told the nurses to turn her away. Dominic had the same experience. They were both shut out, left to drown in their guilt. Then, 10 days after the confrontation, Isabella called Lily. Come to the hospital. Tomorrow at 2. Just you. Lily arrived early, her stomach in knots. When she entered Isabella's room, her sister was sitting in the chair by the window looking out at the parking lot below. She looked thinner, more fragile, but there was strength in her posture that hadn't been there before. Sit down, Isabella said without looking at her. Lily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Isabella said, about what happened, about what I remember from before the accident. She turned to face Lily. Do you know why I was driving that night? You left a voicemail. Said you needed to talk, that you'd made a mistake. I was leaving Dominic. The words hung in the air between them. I was going to break off the engagement. We'd had a fight that night. I told him I didn't want to marry him, that I felt trapped in a life I didn't choose. He thought I was being dramatic, that it was just cold feet, but it wasn't. Lily stared at her sister. You were going to end it? I didn't love him. Not really. I loved the idea of him, the life he represented. But the actual person? We weren't right for each other. I was going to call you that night to tell you I was coming to stay at your place while I figured things out. Then the accident happened. Why didn't you tell him sooner? Because I was scared. Scared of disappointing everyone, of admitting I'd made a mistake. The Harringtons had invested so much in the wedding. Our parents were so proud. It was easier to keep pretending than to face the truth. Isabella smiled sadly. Kind of ironic, isn't it? I don't understand. What are you saying? I'm saying you and Dominic didn't steal something that was mine. Because it wasn't mine to begin with. I didn't want him, Lily. I was trying to figure out how to give him back when fate did it for me. That doesn't make what we did okay, Lily said. We still betrayed you. We still lied. You did. And I'm not saying I'm not hurt or angry. I am. The way this happened was horrible, but I've been lying here thinking about what I would have wanted you to do if I could have spoken to you that night before the accident. And honestly, I would have wanted you to save Mom and Dad's house. I would have wanted you to take the deal. Tears rolled down Lily's face. Isabella, I would have wanted Dominic to find someone who actually loved him instead of just tolerating him. And if that person turned out to be you, Isabella shrugged. I wouldn't have chosen it this way, but I can't be angry at you for finding something real in the middle of all this mess. Are you serious right now? I'm trying to be realistic. What's the alternative? I stay angry forever? Ruin all our lives because you made an impossible choice in an impossible situation? Isabella reached out and took Lily's hand. You've spent your whole life putting everyone else first. You gave up medical school for me. You married my fiancé to save our parents. Maybe it's time you did something for yourself. I don't deserve your forgiveness, maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. Isabella squeezed her hand. Besides, you think I want to marry a guy who fell in love with someone else? My ego isn't that big. Lily laughed through her tears and Isabella smiled. It wasn't perfect. There was still hurt and healing ahead, but it was a start. The divorce papers were filed 2 months later. By then, Isabella had moved to a new city to start fresh, taking a job opportunity she'd turned down before the engagement. She called Lily every week, their relationship slowly rebuilding itself on a foundation of honesty instead of shadows. Dominic and Lily maintained their distance, both agreeing it was the right thing to do. But on the day the divorce was finalized, Dominic showed up at Lily's new apartment with flowers and a question that made her heart race. When enough time has passed and we've done this the right way, can I take you to dinner? Lily, standing in the doorway of her fresh start, saw the hope and fear in his eyes and recognized it because she felt the same thing. Some loves began in darkness but learned to live in light. Yes, she said, when enough time has passed. When we've both figured out who we are separately, ask me again then. I will, Dominic promised. And 6 months later, on a cool autumn evening, he did. This time there were no obligations or guilt. Just two people who'd found each other in the hardest way possible and chose to try again. The right way. And when Lily introduced Dominic to her medical school classmates, because she'd finally applied and gotten in, no one knew the complicated history that had brought them together. They just saw two people who looked at each other like they'd survived something terrible and come out stronger for it. Because they had.